You are suspended in the pitch black over the Pacific Ocean.
It is completely dark.
Exactly. Just absolute darkness. It's July 1937, and the rain is just lashing against the thin metal skin of this aircraft.
Which is terrifying if you really picture
Well,
it.
it's a nightmare. And the engines, these massive Pratt & Whitney Wasps, they are quite literally eating themselves alive because they're starved of fuel.
Right. They are running on fumes at this point.
Yeah. And the dialogue is so desperate. It's crackling through the static in the cockpit, and you hear a voice ask, "What time is it, Bill?"
The tension there is just unbearable.
It really is. And then there's this line that just, it absolutely chills you to the bone. The voice says, "The world is so full of useless islands."
That is the ultimate nightmare for a navigator.
You're right.
You're looking down into this void, just desperately searching for a single speck of solid ground.
Right. Howland Island.
Yeah, a sliver of coral that's just a mile and a half long, sitting in the middle of this endless hostile sea.
And then comes the final moment. The engines finally cough and give out, and the plane begins this long, slow, agonizing glide toward the waves.
Just gravity taking over.
Yeah. And the last words spoken before the impact are just haunting. Someone says, "At least it's quiet now."
And the silence after that line is just so heavy. It really sits in your chest.
It does. But the truly jarring thing about that silence is what actually breaks it.
Right, because it isn't the sound of the ocean.
No, it's the sound of a studio audience in 1942, and this peppy announcer suddenly cutting in to talk about, DuPont chemical product.
Yeah, the tonal shift is unbelievable.
The cognitive dissonance gives me whiplash every time I hear it. Because, we aren't listening to a recovered cockpit voice recorder of Amelia Earhart's final flight.
We are definitely not.
We're listening to the final scene of Toward a Farther Star, which is a World War II-era radio drama broadcast on the Cavalcade of America program.
Starring Madeleine Carroll, the famous British actress playing Earhart.
Right. And they are broadcasting this visceral, terrifying recreation of an American tragedy to a nation that is just reeling from the early, brutal months of the Second World War.
It's a really fascinating manipulation of public memory, honestly.
Yeah, manipulation is a good word for it. So for our mission today, you and I are going to unpack this. We're going to dive into how a legend is constructed and weaponized and eventually celebrated.
And we have some incredible sources to pull from today.
We do. We're looking at the script for this 1942 radio play, but we're also pulling from modern archives, tourism info from Atchison, Kansas, and the details of the huge Amelia Earhart Festival happening there this weekend.
So we're kind of bridging the 1940s with, today.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Going back to 1942, the broadcast airs when America is fully engaged in a two-front war.
Yeah, the stakes literally could not be higher.
And what the writers of Cavalcade of America did was take this still raw wound of Earhart's 1937 disappearance and, they turned it into a piece of high-grade, government-aligned propaganda.
They absolutely did. They weaponized her legacy. And I don't use that word lightly.
I have to admit, when I first read the script for this, my immediate reaction was almost defensive on her behalf.
Really? Like you felt they were crossing a line?
Yeah. It just felt exploitative. They take this intensely personal, tragic end to a pioneer's life and slap a corporate sponsorship on it to sell the war effort.
I can see how you'd arrive at that.
The announcer right at the top of the show literally says, "Today, 2,200 women are piloting for the Civil Air Patrol."
Right, tying her directly to the current events.
Exactly. And he talks about women ferrying bombers, proving that, quote, "there is hardly a job that a woman cannot do."
In shipyards and airplane plants.
Right. It just felt like they were using her ghost to staff the factories.
Well, I see why you'd read it that way, but I think calling it merely exploitative kind of ignores the psychological reality of 1942.
What do you mean?
You have to remember the sheer panic of that moment in history. The U.S. was facing a staggering labor shortage.
Because so many men were drafted.
Yeah, exactly. The survival of the Allied forces quite literally depended on millions of American women suddenly pouring into heavy industry.
And a lot of these women had never even been permitted to work outside the home.
Right, let alone build bombers or handle heavy munitions. So the government and these corporations, they needed a cultural icon to give people permission to break those deeply entrenched gender roles.
So they needed a role model.
More than that, Earhart wasn't just a ghost. She was basically the only precedent they had. She was the martyr they desperately needed to point to and say, she built the runway, now you have to take off.
Okay, I'll buy the necessity of it. That makes sense from a wartime perspective.
Well, reporting on what they did, not necessarily endorsing it, but it was incredibly effective.
But if they wanted to elevate her as this feminist icon for the war effort, the way they structured the play is completely baffling to me.
Baffling how?
Well, they didn't tell the story from Amelia's perspective.
Oh, right, Johnny.
Yes. They filtered her entire life through this male surrogate character named Johnny. He's a mechanic.
He introduces himself as the guy who fixed the propeller.
Yeah, with that heavy accent. Why take the most famous female aviator in the world and force the audience to understand her through a guy in grease-stained overalls?
It does seem counterintuitive at first glance.
Doesn't that immediately diminish her agency?
Not if you understand the demographics of the audience sitting by their radios in 1942.
Okay, explain that.
Well, millions of men were fighting overseas, but millions more men and women were suddenly working side by side in those factories.
Right.
Johnny the mechanic isn't there to diminish her. He is there to translate her to the working class.
Translate her how? Like, make her more relatable.
Exactly, by validating her technical competence. See, Earhart was often portrayed in the press back then as a sort of ethereal, almost mystical figure of the skies.
Oh, like a celebrity daredevil.
Right. But Johnny is a wrench turner. He speaks the language of torque and compression and spark plugs.
So when Johnny tells the audience that Amelia hung around the hangar...
That she understood the engine, that she didn't mind getting oil on her hands.
Oh, I see. He is telling a nation of newly minted factory workers that she was one of them.
Exactly. She respected the machine. And more importantly, for the male listeners who might have been, skeptical of women entering the workforce, Johnny is saying, if I respect her, you have to respect the women working next to you.
Ah, he's giving her street cred on the factory floor.
Precisely.
And you do see that mechanical obsession come through brilliantly in the script. There is this one scene that I just loved. It's so specific and weird.
Are you talking about the housefly?
Yes. Johnny is talking about how she used to shoot the breeze with the boys in the hangar, and the mechanics get into this heated argument about a fly.
Specifically, a fly on the underside of an airplane wing.
Right. One of the mechanics insists that for a fly to land upside down on the ceiling or, the bottom of a wing, it has to do a barrel roll.
Which is such a funny thing for a bunch of mechanics to be arguing about.
But he argues that the fly noses up, lays over backwards, and uses its momentum to plant its feet on the ceiling.
And Amelia is right there in the middle of it.
Yes. She's staring at this insect, completely obsessed with the aerodynamics of how a fly manipulates airflow to cheat gravity.
It's a brilliant piece of writing, really.
Yeah.
Because it highlights something crucial about early aviation that we often forget.
What's that?
They didn't have computer simulations. They were learning fluid dynamics by observing the natural world.
So just watching birds and bugs.
Exactly. If you want to understand how to keep a multi-ton metal tube in the air, you have to understand lift, drag, and thrust.
And a fly landing upside down is essentially executing a really complex micro-aerobatic maneuver.
Right. It's manipulating the boundary layer of air along a surface. The writers use that anecdote to show that Amelia wasn't just a pilot. She was an engineer by observation.
And the medium of radio makes that obsession so much more potent. It's the theater of the mind,
It really is.
Like in a movie, you'd just see Madeleine Carroll sitting in a plywood cockpit in front of a rear projection screen. It would look fake.
Very fake by today's standards.
But here, the audio engineers of Cavalcade of America had to make you feel the altitude.
They layered the thrum of the engine sound effects, the vibration in the actors' voices, the wind.
And Madeleine Carroll delivers this phenomenal monologue where she describes distance as having a taste and texture that the earth destroys with its roads and cities.
It's very poetic.
She says she wants to go up into the clean air and devour distance.
Devour distance. That phrasing perfectly encapsulates her drive, but that drive crashes headfirst into the sexism of the era.
Which the play actually tackles surprisingly head-on.
It does. There's a scene where she confronts a Mr. Brown, an airline executive.
She wants a job as a commercial pilot, right?
Yeah. And he flatly refuses. He literally calls women congenital nitwits when it comes to flying.
Which, by the way, made my blood boil reading that.
It's infuriating. But her response is incredible. She tells him to imagine how much richer the world would be if half its population were free to do their part of the world's work.
Right. She says the world has been walking on one foot, working with one hand, and flying with only one of its wings.
And right there, the illusion of 1920s Amelia Earhart drops, and you are hearing the pure, unadulterated 1942 wartime messaging of the Office of War Information.
It is a direct challenge to the domestic status quo.
Designed entirely to make the women listening at home feel indispensable.
Which brings us to the most jarring, surreal moment in the entire broadcast.
Oh, the commercial break.
Yes. Right after this impassioned plea for female empowerment and devouring distance, the broadcast abruptly cuts to a commercial break for the sponsor.
The DuPont Company.
It is a tonal whiplash, but historically, it is an absolute goldmine.
It really is a window into 1942 industry.
Imagine listening to this life-or-death drama about crossing the Atlantic, and suddenly an announcer is enthusiastically pitching you industrial paint.
But it's not just paint. They're pitching a concept they developed called three-dimensional seeing.
Which sounds like a sci-fi concept, but it's really just a painting strategy.
Yes. They explained that in many wartime industrial plants, they were installing these state-of-the-art lighting systems.
But the light was just being swallowed up.
Exactly. It was being absorbed by dingy ceilings, dark floors, and most importantly, the dark cast-iron heavy machinery.
Right, because black and dark gray absorb photons. They don't reflect them.
Basic physics.
So the illuminating engineers and paint technicians at DuPont created this system to paint the bodies of the machines in a specific light-reflecting gray.
And they painted the dangerous, moving parts of the machinery in a highly contrasting buff or light green color.
And they claimed this increased usable light by up to 100% without using an extra watt of electricity.
And when you analyze the physics and psychology of what they were doing, it's actually revolutionary for the time.
How so?
By increasing the contrast ratio between the material being worked on and the moving parts of the lathe or the press, you drastically reduce the dilation and constriction cycles of the human pupil.
So it reduces eye strain. You know, it's exactly like modern tech companies talking about UI and UX design, user interface and user experience.
That's a great comparison.
When Apple or Google push dark mode or optimize color contrast on our screens, they are doing it to reduce visual fatigue during a digital workflow.
And DuPont was selling physical UX design for 1940s factories.
They were optimizing the physical interface between the human worker and the spinning metal.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize it. And remember the context. This wasn't a luxury.
It was a critical safety measure.
Right. You have millions of new workers, the very women. Earhart was just inspiring in the previous scene, operating unfamiliar, incredibly dangerous, heavy machinery for 10 or 12 hours a day.
So reducing visual fatigue didn't just boost production by 15%, as the ad claimed?
No, it stopped people from losing fingers. It conserved what they called manpower, which was, in reality, largely woman power.
It's this closed loop of historical synergy. Earhart is the pioneer of the machine. Her story inspires the women to operate the machines, and DuPont sells the paint that keeps those women safe at the machines.
It's all connected.
But here's what I struggle with.
What's that?
How does a woman who was so thoroughly commodified into a national propaganda tool during World War II reclaim her personal human legacy after the war?
That is a great question.
Like, when the factories close and the men come home, how does the miss become a person again?
Well, to answer that, you have to leave the abstract theater of the radio and go to the physical geography of where she actually started.
You mean Kansas?
Yes. You have to look at how her hometown of Atchison, Kansas, preserves her memory today.
Atchison is this historic railroad town sitting right on the banks of the Missouri River. She was born there on July 24th, 1897.
A very different era.
Completely. And looking at the archives from the Atchison Tourism Board, the way they anchor her legacy is so fascinating to me.
It's very grounded.
Right. The Amelia Earhart Birthplace Museum at 223 North Terrace Street isn't some high-tech aviation hangar. It's a meticulously restored, turn-of-the-century Victorian house.
And that's significant because it represents the exact world she was born into, which was a world of intense restriction.
Think about Victorian architecture and social design.
Right. It's a world of parlor rooms, tight corsets, and rigid expectations of domesticity.
The architecture itself was basically designed to keep women inside, focused on the home.
Exactly. That house is the physical embodiment of the gravity she had to defy to go devour distance.
But the poetic justice of that house today is just incredible.
Because who runs it?
Yes. The museum isn't owned by the state or a generic historical society. It is owned and operated by the 99s.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the 99s is an international organization of licensed women pilots.
It was founded in 1929, right?
Yep, and Amelia Earhart was a founding member and its very first elected president.
It's like a hostile takeover of a Victorian home.
It really is.
You have this house, which was a symbol of 19th century female confinement, now legally owned, preserved, and managed by a global syndicate of female aviators.
It's a brilliant subversion of the space. The house is a relic, but it is entirely in the hands of the future she helped engineer.
It grounds her myth in a very tangible reality. And Atchison doesn't just confine her memory to the interior of a home.
No, they've gone much bigger than that.
They have carved her directly into the landscape. You looked into the earthwork portrait, right?
I did, and it is absolutely stunning. It's a 1-acre piece of land art created by Kansas artist Stan Hurd in 1997.
And it's situated on a hillside near Warnock Lake.
Right. He used permanent plantings, stone, and natural materials to essentially grow a portrait of her out of the Kansas soil.
And crucially, because of its massive scale, it's a portrait you can really only fully appreciate from the sky.
Or from a specifically built viewing deck on nearby hill. But the aerial view is the point.
When you stand in front of that house today, or, you look out over that 1-acre earthwork, you have to wonder, why does this specific patch of Kansas soil matter when her real legacy was written over the Atlantic and the Pacific?
I think it matters because it proves that global, history-altering defiance doesn't start in a vacuum.
It starts in a normal living room.
Exactly. It starts with a kid standing on the banks of the Missouri River, watching the water flow toward a larger ocean, deciding that the horizon isn't a boundary line, but a starting line.
It democratizes the legend. It makes her feel accessible to anyone.
It does. But we can't fully understand that legend without understanding the machines that made it possible.
And the fatal flaws of those machines.
Right, because the physical geography of her hometown also houses the physical reality of her disappearance.
Okay, let's transition to that. If we go across town to the Amelia Earhart Hangar Museum at the Memorial Airport, you step into this massive 17,000 square foot Art Deco-inspired building.
And the centerpiece isn't a replica.
No, it's Muriel.
Muriel is the world's last remaining Lockheed Electra 10E.
It is completely identical to the plane Earhart flew and vanished in on that final 1937 flight.
Seeing Muriel really brings rushing back the reality of what she was actually doing up there.
I want to dig into the mechanics of this plane. In the radio drama, right before she takes off from New Guinea on July 2nd, 1937, Johnny the mechanic tells her not to bank on coming down safely.
And she replies, completely unsentimentally, that she figures her chances of survival are 10 to 1.
Which is horrifying. Why were the odds so bad? What was the actual mechanical reality of flying an Electra 10E across the Pacific?
Well, the Electra 10E was a marvel of its time, for sure. It was an all-metal, twin-engine monoplane. But flying it over thousands of miles of open ocean was essentially pushing 1930s technology past its breaking point.
Especially regarding navigation, right?
Exactly. Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, relied heavily on radio direction finding, or RDF.
How exactly did that work back then? Because, today we just look at a blue dot on our phones.
We completely take GPS for granted. In 1937, RDF involved a loop antenna on the aircraft.
Okay, loop antenna.
You tune into a radio frequency broadcast by a station on the ground. In their case, it was the Coast Guard cutter Itasca, which was waiting at Howland Island.
So they are sending out a signal.
Right. As the pilot rotates the loop antenna, the radio signal gets louder or softer.
Just based on which way the loop is facing.
Exactly. When the signal is completely silent, a phenomenon called the null, the antenna is pointing directly at or directly away from the broadcasting station.
So it gives you a line of position.
Yes.
So wait, she just had to follow the silence to the island?
In theory. But the reality of high-frequency radio waves over the ocean is an absolute nightmare of physics.
Oh no, what goes wrong?
First, you have something called skip zones, where radio waves bounce off the ionosphere and miss the receiver entirely.
So the signal literally just jumps over the plane.
Yep. And then you have night effect, where the ionosphere shifts at dawn and dusk, bending the radio waves and giving false readings.
Which is when she was flying.
Exactly. And, crucially, there was a massive miscommunication regarding the frequencies Earhart's equipment could receive versus what the Itasca was transmitting.
So she was effectively flying blind.
Yes.
She had these two massive engines pulling her forward at 150 miles an hour, and she was listening to static, just trying to find a microscopic coral reef based on invisible, bouncing radio waves.
Knowing all that, Her stating the odds is 10 to 1 doesn't sound pessimistic at all.
No, it sounds like the cold, hard calculation of an engineer.
She understood the machine, and she understood its limits. But I want to turn this around on you for a second.
Okay, shoot.
The Lockheed Electra 10E in that museum is a physical anchor to a mystery that has spawned countless theories over the last 80-plus years.
Oh yeah, the crash and sink theory, the Gardner Island hypothesis, Japanese capture. People are obsessed.
Right. Why do you think her disappearance still commands so much cultural real estate? Are we just obsessed with unsolved true crime, or does her vanishing serve some larger psychological purpose for us as a society?
Ooh, that is the million-dollar question.
What's your take?
I think if she had landed on Howland Island, completed the circumnavigation, and come home to a ticker tape parade, she would be in the history books, sure.
Undoubtedly.
But she wouldn't be a myth.
Why not?
Because if she comes back, she has to deal with the mundane reality of surviving.
Right, the day-to-day.
She has to age out of her leather jacket. She has to figure out what to do when her reflexes slow down or when newer, faster planes make her records obsolete.
That's a really profound way to look at it.
But disappearing at the absolute zenith of her fame, attempting the most dangerous thing possible, the ocean essentially froze her in amber.
She is never compromised by the slow fade of celebrity.
Exactly. She is eternal. The mystery preserves the ethos of the pioneer perfectly. We don't have to watch her retire. We only ever have to watch her fly.
And that kinetic, eternal energy, the refusal to let her story end in a tragic, mournful silence, is exactly what defines how Atchison celebrates her today.
Which is so cool because it's not a funeral, it's a festival.
The 29th Annual Amelia Earhart Festival. Looking at the schedules for July 17th and 18th, 2026, which coincides with America's 250th birthday, it is the furthest thing from a dusty historical society lecture.
It is a massive block party that takes over the entire town.
It really is.
The local news reports highlight this incredible lineup. You have an aerobatic show over the Missouri River. Think about that for a second.
It's visceral.
They don't just put up photos of her in a museum. They literally fill the airspace over her childhood home with the kind of high G-force maneuvers she loved.
It's a kinetic monument.
It grounds her legacy in pure joy. Earhart didn't just fly to break records or advance women's rights, though she obviously did both.
She flew because it was thrilling.
Exactly. She flew because she loved the visceral experience of the sky.
And the festival with the food vendors, the concert in the sky, fireworks spectacular down on the riverfront, it recreates that sense of communal thrill.
And the musical lineup for this particular year perfectly weaves into the theme of female trailblazers breaking into male-dominated spaces.
They have Lori Morgan headlining, which is a fascinating choice.
Right.
How do you connect a country music star to a 1930s aviator?
It is all about the barrier entry.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, Lori Morgan was the first woman in country music to begin her career with 3 consecutive platinum albums. She was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry at just 24.
Which is a huge achievement at any age.
Right. And country music in the 80s and 90s was an intensely male-dominated industry, just like aviation in the 1920s and 30s.
Ah, I see the parallel.
Morgan had to navigate an industry that often wanted female artists to just, look pretty and sing soft ballads. But she brought this undeniable powerhouse believability. She commanded the space.
Earhart commanded the sky. Morgan commanded the stage.
Yes. It's the same frequency of defiance, just broadcast on a different channel.
And she's joined by Black Hawk, a double platinum group, ensuring the riverfront is just vibrating with this celebratory energy.
It's not a solemn memorial at all. It's a living wake that evolved into a celebration of what Hugels can do when they refuse to stay grounded.
Which leads us to the climax of the festival.
The award.
Exactly. Amidst all the fireworks and the music, there is a moment of profound, forward-looking significance. The 2026 Amelia Earhart Pioneering Achievement Award.
The Atchison Amelia Earhart Foundation awards this annually to someone who carries her spirit forward.
And when I saw the press release for the 2026 recipient, my jaw hit the floor.
Who is it this year?
The award is going to Dr. Duilia DeMello.
Dr. DeMello's resume reads like the future Earhart was trying to build. She is an acclaimed astrophysicist,
A former associate scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center.
and a professor at the Catholic University of America. She has fundamentally altered our understanding of galaxy formation.
She discovered a supernova.
Let's unpack that for a second, because throwing around a word like supernova doesn't really do justice to the science of what she actually found.
It's not just a bright star.
No. It is the violent, explosive death of a massive star.
When a star runs out of nuclear fuel, its core collapses under its own gravity.
And then it rebounds in an explosion so unimaginably powerful that it can briefly outshine an entire galaxy.
And Dr. DeMello found one. She observed the light from a stellar explosion that happened millions of years ago, finally reaching our telescopes here on Earth.
And beyond the sheer astrophysics of it, she took that discovery and used it to build a ladder for others.
Yes. She founded a non-profit called Mulher das Estrelas, which translates from Portuguese to Women of the Stars.
She travels, speaks, and advocates globally to inspire young women, particularly in Brazil, to pursue STEM fields: science, technology, and space exploration.
When you place Dr. DeMello next to the 1942 radio play we started with, the arc of history is just breathtaking.
It really is. The radio drama was titled Toward a Farther Star.
Right. In 1942, reaching a farther star was a metaphor. It meant flying a propeller plane over an ocean. It meant crossing the Atlantic.
Now, more than 8 decades later, the award-bearing Amelia Earhart's name is being handed to a woman who literally studies the physical mechanics of the stars using the Hubble Space Telescope.
From Fred Noonan trying to navigate by staring at stars through a scratched plexiglass window over the Pacific,
To Dr. DeMello capturing the light of dead stars through the Hubble, it's an evolution of human exploration that Earhart set the trajectory for.
it answers the fundamental question of how a legacy survives.
How does it survive?
It survives by transcending its original medium. Earhart's legacy is no longer confined to the troposphere. The physical evidence of this is right there in Atchison.
Wait, what evidence?
If you go to the International Forest of Friendship, which is a living memorial to aviation and space exploration nestled in her hometown,
Okay.
you will find a life-size bronze statue of Amelia. And gazing over that statue is the moon tree.
The moon tree. Oh, this blows my mind.
It's a sycamore tree, grown from a seed that was taken to the literal surface of the moon aboard the Apollo 14 mission in 1971.
Wow.
Stuart Roosa, the command module pilot, carried hundreds of seeds in his personal kit. They orbited the moon, came back to Earth, germinated, and one was planted in Atchison.
So you have the roots of a tree that has traveled through the vacuum of space, anchoring into the soil of the town where aviation's greatest pioneer was born.
The town has literally tethered her memory to the cosmos.
Through the moon tree, through honors given to astrophysicists discovering supernovas, through the modern women of the Artemis program who are preparing to return to the lunar surface, Earhart's spirit is inextricably tied to the future of space exploration.
The horizon she was chasing didn't end at Howland Island. It extended upward.
It is the ultimate realization of devouring distance. From a Victorian parlor in Kansas to a desperate propaganda broadcast in 1942, to the mechanics of a Lockheed Electra, to the birth and death of galaxies.
That's an unbelievable legacy.
It really is. And for anyone listening today, I highly encourage you to bridge this history for yourself.
Definitely go check it out.
First, track down the original audio of that Cavalcade of America broadcast. Sit in a quiet room, listen to the static, listen to the roar of the Pratt & Whitney engines, and hear the urgency in Madeline Carroll's voice.
Understand the fear and the hope of 1942.
And second, if you ever have the chance, make a pilgrimage to Atchison, Kansas, especially during the festival. Walk the brick streets. Stand in front of that Victorian house.
Look up at the aerobatics over the Missouri River.
Stand where this legend first looked at the sky and wondered what was past the river bend.
Because when we synthesize all of this, the radio scripts, the museum archives, the physics of flight, and the astrophysics of tomorrow, we return to the words she spoke in that broadcast.
Amelia Earhart didn't just devour the distance over the Atlantic or the Pacific.
She devoured the distance between human limitation and the stars. The light from a supernova takes millions of years to reach us, long after the star itself is gone.
Earhart vanished in 1937, but the light of her defiance, her curiosity, and her absolute refusal to stay grounded is still reaching us today, illuminating the path for the next generation of explorers.
Which leaves us with the only question that really matters.
The horizon is still out there. The sky is still open. What distances in your own life are waiting to be devoured?